Imagine a prison where the doors don't slam, they sigh. Where footsteps echo not in fear, but in silence. This is Finland, a place the world whispers about. A place where criminals sleep on memory foam mattresses and murderers brew fresh coffee in communal kitchens. But tonight, we are not here to admire it. We are here to uncover what the glossy documentaries refuse to show, the secrets behind the smiles, the truth hidden beneath the clean white walls, and the story of one inmate whose past arrived long before his release date. Because behind every soft pillow lies a hard truth. And behind the luxury of Finland's most astonishing prison cells, there is a mystery that officials have never been able to explain. Stay with me, because what you're about to hear may change everything you thought you knew about justice, punishment, and the human mind. The story begins on a winter morning, when the sky hung low and colourless over the island fortress of Suomenlinna, a prison without walls, surrounded not by fences, but by the freezing Baltic Sea. Inmates moved freely, trusting the cold water to do what guard towers never could. But one inmate, a man known only as Elias Varshanen, didn't report for the morning head count. The first guard to notice wasn't alarmed. People overslept here. They behaved like residents, not captives. But when the guard opened the door to Elias's room, he found the bed neatly made, the lamp still warm, and a notebook on the desk, open to a page that held only a single sentence: freedom aiti outside. There were no signs of struggle, no footprints leading to a boat, just a quiet, pristine, unsettling absence. The administration dismissed it as an escape until prisoners began whispering that Elias had been hearing things, voices in the walls, footsteps behind him at night, and a name he refused to repeat. As rumors spread, officials sealed the records. Yet, on the night he disappeared, 3 inmates reported seeing Elias walking calmly through the courtyard, even though every camera showed nothing but snow swirling in the wind. That was the moment journalists took interest. That was the moment the perfect system cracked. The investigation moved to modern, Holden-style units, where Lena Koski, a criminologist, was assigned to assess the psychological balance of the inmates after Elias vanished. She expected cooperation. Instead, she found a synchronized silence, as if the prisoners were protecting something. One inmate finally spoke, a former banker who still ironed his shirts. He told her that Elias believed the prison was an experiment, not of kindness, but of control. That the luxury was a mask, and Finland wasn't being soft on criminals, it was studying them. Lena dismissed it, until she requested Elias's intake file and found that it no longer existed. Not misplaced. Deleted. That's when Lena made the first connection. Because there had been another disappearance 8 years earlier. And another 3 years before that. 3 inmates. 3 erased files. 3 men who, shortly before they vanished, told someone the prison was watching them. Lena's curiosity twisted into our knees. She was a systems auditor at Finland's most progressive prison, a place celebrated for its humanity. But every time she searched for Elias, an inmate who had vanished without a trace, doors slammed shut, databases locked, supervisors suddenly became unavailable. It was as if the system itself had learned to look away. Prisons, no matter how polished, have corners where the polish fades. Late one evening, Lena found one. A corridor that shouldn't exist, humming with electricity. The warm oak floor turned to cold stone tile. The air felt heavy, dense with untold stories. She knew she wasn't supposed to be there, but something between instinct and dread pulled her forward. At the end was a steel door, unmarked except for a keypad worn from use. As she got closer, a strange sound came from the other side. Not machinery, not voices, something softer. A rhythmic murmur, like someone confessing in their sleep. Suddenly, footsteps approached from behind. She turned to find the prison director, his expression calm, his eyes revealing nothing. He didn't ask what she was doing. He just placed a hand on her shoulder and said, "Some rooms exist to protect the inmates. Others exist to protect society." He guided her back into the light, his slow pace almost deliberate, as if ensuring she memorized nothing. The atmosphere instantly shifted back to normal, clean, impossibly serene, like stepping out of a nightmare into a furniture ad. But Lena couldn't shake the feeling that he wasn't surprised to see her, just inconvenienced. And the look in his eyes wasn't a warning, it was fear. Later that night, reviewing the security footage, her blood ran cold. The camera feed skipped. Exactly 7 minutes. the exact time she stood before that steel door. And on the playback, she wasn't there at all. It was as if she, too, had been erased, just like Elias. News of the disappearance was spreading. Activists called it negligence. Critics called it proof that Finland's humane model was a failure. The world wanted answers. Inside the prison, the mood grew tense. Inmates refused their privileges. The workshops and music rooms fell silent. A quiet inmate asked to speak with her. His hands trembled as he told her that Elias had spoken to him the night he vanished. He wasn't talking about escape. He'd woken up to find someone sitting at the edge of his bed, someone who was under guard, wasn't an inmate, and wasn't supposed to exist. The young man believed Elias was still inside the prison, just in a place nobody admitted was real. When Lena asked where, he whispered a phrase she would never forget: to the rooms where they fix the ones who can be corrected. By morning, he'd withdrawn his statement, terrified the walls themselves had hurt him. That's when Lena realized this wasn't about escape or rehabilitation. It was about selection. Someone was deciding which inmates deserved a second chance, and which ones belonged to another purpose entirely. Then there was Arto Niemi, a former military intelligence tech who hadn't spoken a word in 11 months. He watched everything with a chilling stillness. 4 days, Lena observed him from afar. On the 4th evening, he finally looked up and met her gaze. He spoke only 7 words: "You're looking in the wrong direction." Before she could respond, he motioned for her to sit. He explained that the disappearances weren't random. They followed a cycle. Every few years, the prison selected someone, not the violent ones, but the ones who questioned the system, who sensed the comfort was staged. The luxury wasn't compassion, it was camouflage. A way to make the world stop looking. The inmates weren't killed. They were transferred to a floor that didn't exist on any blueprint. Then Arto leaned closer, his voice a bare whisper. Elias wasn't the target. You were. Lena's stomach tightened. He explained that the prison wasn't for rehabilitation. It was a screening program. It identified minds that adapted too well to confinement disguised as freedom. And then came the coldest words of all: the ones who disappear are the ones the system fears. Just then, a subtle alarm vibrated through the floor. Arto went silent, his face an inert mask again. A guard entered, his eyes flicking toward Lena with quiet suspicion. She had crossed a line she was never meant to see. That night, unable to sleep, Lena's mind replayed Arto's prophecy. Just before dawn, an encrypted message appeared on her terminal, from a system she shouldn't have access to. The file was labeled, "Fourth subject identified." With trembling hands, she opened it. The photo inside was of her. The morning came without light, as if the sky had forgotten how to brighten. I was sitting in my car outside the prison, staring at a photo on my phone. It was me, but not me. The angle was wrong, the lighting unfamiliar. The timestamp said it was taken 2 days ago, while I was supposedly asleep in my apartment miles away. I tried to report it, but my login credentials had expired. I called my department head, and a polite, almost soothing voice told me there was no record of me ever working at the prison. My employee number was gone. My badge was invalid. My email was wiped clean. Even the receptionist, who'd greeted me every morning for weeks, looked at me like a stranger. It was like I was being erased in real time, just like Elias had been. I refused to leave. I told the guards I needed to continue my psychological assessments. They exchanged a look, not suspicious, but scripted, and handed me a temporary pass, the kind for outsiders. Inside, the prison had changed overnight. The rehabilitation posters were gone. Staff walked in pairs. Doors that were always open were now locked. The soft, experimental feel of the place had hardened, like warm wax turning brittle. I went straight to the archive room, the last place with physical files. It was gutted. The cabinets were empty, the labels peeled off. The archivist, a quiet woman with silver hair, insisted they'd gone fully digital years ago. She said there were never any paper files, but her hands were shaking as she stacked empty folders. Then, I saw his reflection in the glass door behind me. A tall man, standing motionless in the hall, head tilted, just watching. I spun around, but the hallway was empty. The archivist leaned in and whispered, "If they know you're searching, they will move faster." I asked who they were, but she just walked into the staff washroom and never came back out. I waited. 20 minutes, then 30. I pushed open the door. The stalls were empty. The window was sealed. She was just gone. My phone vibrated. A new message, no sender. Just 4 words, do not speak to Ardo. Before I could process it, the lights dimmed. A calm, rehearsed voice echoed through the speakers. Attention staff. A security calibration is in progress. Remain where you are. Doors slid shut. Locks engaged. And the cameras, they weren't pointing at the inmates. They were pointing at me. I wasn't being dismissed. I was being contained. The luxury prison was an illusion. And as that illusion dissolved, a low mechanical hum started vibrating up through the floor, like a machine powering up for a task it had waited years to complete. The lockdown stretched into an unnatural stillness. I stood alone, feeling that hum through my shoes. It wasn't the sound of heating or generators. It was a pulse, a heartbeat buried in the concrete. I tried the nearest door. Locked. The next. Sealed. But the third one was different. A panel flickered, scanning my face with a cold blue light. I hadn't triggered it. It had recognized me. The lock clicked, and the door opened to a stairwell I'd never seen before. The air that drifted out was cool, metallic, from a part of the building untouched by the manufactured comfort upstairs. The stairwell spiraled down, lit by narrow strips of light that cast no shadows. The walls grew thicker, older. It felt like descending into a secret history. Halfway down, I realized there were no pipes, no wires, no ventilation. This level wasn't meant to support life. It was meant to contain it. At the bottom was a heavy, matte black door with no handle. As I approached, the hum grew stronger, synchronizing with my own pulse. A slit opened in the door, widening into a viewing panel. I peered in. What I saw shattered everything I thought I knew. A long corridor stretched into darkness, lined with rooms that were not cells. The walls were padded for sound suppression. Above each door, a light blinked rhythmically. And in one of those rooms, I saw him. Elias. He was sitting on a narrow bed, staring straight ahead, eyes open but empty. Electrodes were attached to his temples. A silent screen displayed his pulse, unnervingly calm. He wasn't missing. He had been placed here. Stored. A technician in a uniform with no insignia adjusted a dial, and Elias's heartbeat slowed. They weren't harming him. They were controlling him. This wasn't a treatment wing. It was an evaluation facility. A lab. This is where they brought the inmates who were too resilient, the ones who didn't break. They weren't trying to rehabilitate them. They were trying to replicate them, to extract whatever it was that made them psychologically unbreakable. Finland's luxury prisons weren't humane. They were a testing ground. Elias wasn't chosen because he was unstable. He was chosen because he was unbreakable. A sound behind me snapped me back. A silhouette paused on the stairs above, not rushing, just waiting. Then a voice I knew all too well echoed down the stairwell, chillingly calm. "You shouldn't be here, Lena." It was the director. And he wasn't angry. He sounded like a man welcoming someone exactly where he always intended them to be. The director descended the stairs slowly, each footstep measured, as though he were approaching not an intruder, but an expected guest. His expression was calm, his breathing steady, his presence unsettling in its composure. There was no reprimand in his eyes, no trace of shock, only inevitability. I backed away from the door, my pulse hammering, trying to find words that wouldn't form. He reached the bottom step and paused, studying me with the quiet attention of someone analyzing a specimen. He didn't ask how I found the stairwell. He didn't ask how I bypassed access. He didn't ask what I'd seen. Instead, he spoke gently, almost kindly. "You've always been perceptive. That's why you were hired, and why you were monitored." The sentence hit me harder than a shout. I demanded to know what this place was, what they were doing to Elias, what the disappearances meant. But the director just clasped his hands behind his back, as if lecturing a student. He explained that Finland's prison model had achieved what no other nation could, recidivism rates so low they bordered on statistical anomaly. But the world never asked the real question: how? The public believed it was from softness, education, comfort, dignity. But that was only the bait. The real breakthrough, he said, came from identifying the few inmates whose minds remained intact regardless of their environment, men who did not crumble under guilt or isolation. They were anomalies, outliers, psychological rarities. Elias was one of them. So were the 3 others who vanished over the years. And now, according to the program's predictive model, so was I. I protested, insisting I wasn't an inmate. I wasn't a subject. The director smiled faintly. Criminality isn't what defines the candidates, he said. Resilience does. He revealed that the facility wasn't just studying these individuals. It was harvesting neurological patterns, mapping cognitive resistance. It was attempting to engineer a psychological blueprint for a society without rebellion, without dissent, without unpredictable minds. My voice trembled as I asked what happened to the subjects when the study was finished. He didn't answer. Instead, he gestured toward the black door behind me. It slid open without a sound. Inside, the hallway lights brightened, illuminating a row of silent rooms, each containing a motionless figure wired to monitoring systems. Their agency suspended. Then he turned back to me, his voice unwavering. You are not here to expose this. You are here to complete it. I stepped backward, shaking my head, searching for an exit that no longer existed. The hum beneath the floor intensified, resonating through my bones. I realized with chilling clarity that the system had anticipated every step I had taken, each discovery, each suspicion, and guided me to this point. I hadn't uncovered the program. The program had revealed itself to me. Because it wanted me. Footsteps echoed from above, multiple sets now, approaching with synchronized calm. Not a chase. Not a capture. A retrieval. I turned toward the stairwell, but the director lifted a hand. There is nowhere to run. Not because you are trapped, he paused, letting the silence tighten around me, but because you have already been chosen. And in that moment, I understood something far more terrifying than imprisonment. The prison wasn't a building. It was a filter, and I had just passed through it. Then, a sound, a soft shuffle from the far end of the corridor. A figure emerged from the shadows, Arto Niemi. He wasn't the stoic man I knew. He was moving with careful urgency, gesturing for me to follow. Follow me, he mouthed. The director's voice echoed calmly. Resistance is expected. Defiance, unnecessary. Ignoring him, I ran. Arto led me through a maze of service corridors to a hidden door. Inside was a storage room, but in the corner was a panel of blinking lights and monitors. The system's core. It learns, predicts, adapts, Arto whispered. The screens flickered to life, showing Elias, the other missing inmates, and even us. We were all subjects now. Just then, the hum beneath our feet grew louder. On one screen, the director appeared, descending the stairs again, as if he knew exactly where we were. I see you found the core, his voice echoed across the surveillance network. Curiosity. It's always the first floor. Arto frantically typed on the panels, creating a distraction. Alarms chimed. Screens went black. The director's calm expression finally cracked. Interesting, he murmured. I underestimated you. The prison itself seemed to come alive, its systems locking down, acting as an extension of his will. But for the first time, I felt hope. Arto began routing encrypted data, names, files, scans, to public servers. The director's voice boomed. Step forward, and you will join them. He was approaching our door. The system was preparing to seal us in. And then, the impossible happened. On one of the monitors, Elias moved. Not sluggishly, but purposefully, as if waking from a trance. His eyes were sharp, his muscles coiled. The director faltered. The control he wielded wasn't absolute. Elias's awakening wasn't just a chance, it was a catalyst. And in that moment, the balance of power shifted. The monitor flickered. This time, it showed Elias, his eyes wide open, scanning the sterile room. He sat up slowly, the electrodes pulling taut against his temples. For the first time in what felt like forever, he breathed as if he owned his own body. Lena and Arto watched, stunned. They expected a hollow shell, but Elias was anything but. His gaze was calculated, his movements deliberate. He flexed his fingers, as if testing his own existence. Arto whispered, "He's ready. If he's ready, we can move. But we have to be smart. One misstep, and the system erases all of us." Lena nodded, adrenaline surging. She felt the weight of it all, the erased files, the deleted footage. The system had underestimated resilience. It had assumed control was absolute. Elias stood. His first steps were slow but confident. Suddenly, the director's face appeared on the monitors, calm but tense. A slight twitch in his eyebrow was the first sign of unease. "Interesting," the director said softly. The subject moves. You've learned to defy expectation. But defiance has consequences. Lena's hands tightened on the console, scanning pathways and ventilation routes. They had no weapons, no outside help. But they had Elias. And they had the one thing the director never anticipated: choice. "We go now," Elias said, his voice firm. "The system only works if we comply. It predicts behavior. If we act outside its pattern, it can't control us." "Then what's the plan?" Lena asked. Elias's eyes flicked to the monitors. "We expose it. And we move fast. The director will try to contain us, but there's always a lag in the system. We use that." Arto's fingers flew across the console, sending encrypted data out to journalists, to anyone who could witness the truth. The hum beneath the floor grew louder. The lights flickered violently. Doors slammed shut, trying to corral them. But Elias moved calmly, guiding them through an old service corridor. On the monitors, other subjects, once paused, began to stir. "They're waking up," Arto whispered. It was a chain reaction. The director's voice echoed, now edged with tension. "This was never about rehabilitation. You are the anomaly, and anomalies are corrected." Elias paused, placing a hand on Lena's shoulder. "Correction is only possible if you let it define you. We define ourselves. Now, move." They sprinted, navigating tunnels that felt alive, testing their choices. The hidden floor, the floor that shouldn't exist, was alive with resistance. The illusion of control was cracking. The subjects in their rooms began to move, their eyes opening as if from a collective sleep. The system's algorithms faltered, unable to process the refusal to comply. Elias glanced back. "They'll remember," he said quietly. "Even if we don't survive, they'll remember who they are." The director's voice came one last time. "You have defied expectation, for now. But know this: freedom is temporary. Observation is eternal." Then, silence. The system recalibrated, unsure. And in that pause, they emerged into daylight. No one applauded. No one noticed. But for them, it was enough. The story of what lay beneath the polished floors had survived. As the wind swept across the snow, Lena whispered to herself, a vow and a warning: they can observe. They can predict. But they will never control what refuses to be broken.